Alright, this is our last lesson in ratios, rates, and proportions. We are still working with the same learning target as we were last week, which is I can analyze two ratios to determine if they are proportional to one another. We are going to be looking at word problems this week. We are going to be setting up the proportions, which is the different part of the work, and we are going to talk about strategies that we're going to use to set these up. Once we have them set up, we can solve them using the butterfly method, or you can use them as solving by scale factor. It's up to you. There will never be a question that says for you to use one particular strategy. That strategy is up to you. Alright, so let's start. What we are going to look at first is this problem. And from 6th grade, you should have talked about cubes. And cubes is where you're going to go through and circle your numbers, underline your question, box in any action words, and then give an explanation. Question number 1. Chocolate at a candy store costs $6 per dozen. How much does one candy cost? Round your answer to the nearest cent. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to circle any numbers that we see. So we have $6, and then we have a dozen. Alright, now we're going to underline our question. How much does one candy cost? Okay, what we're going to do after we've done those two things is we need to identify what it is we're talking about. What is it wanting in our question? How much does one candy cost? So we're talking about candy and we're talking about cost. So I'm going to write my two units here. Okay. Now what I want to do is go back and look for what we call a given ratio. This ratio is going to compare what it is the question's looking for. So my given ratio would have to do with one of these numbers. So $6, well $6 is a cost, so I'm going to put that in the denominator because that's where I put the cost. A dozen, so a dozen, hopefully you know, but if you don't, is 12. Okay, that's what we call a given ratio. From here, we set it equal to, and there's going to be another number, all right? There's going to be one that we have to use or find. How much does one candy cost? So this idea of one candy, since we're talking about candy, we're going to put it in the numerator, okay? Now, from here, there's going to be an empty space. It won't always be in the denominator, it may be in the numerator, but we're just going to put the variable x. You could have chose any letter of the alphabet. Now, we have our proportion set up. This should look very familiar to you. I needed my units here to help me set this problem up, okay? You can do a couple of different things from here. You can use scale factor, or you can use cross products. I'm going to use cross products. So with cross products, remember I'm talking about the butterfly method. 6 times 1 is 6. 12 times x is 12x. Bring down your equal sign. Now, from here, your goal is to get x by itself. The 12 is trying to multiply, so I'm going to divide both sides by 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1. The way we show 1x is just by putting x equals 6 divided by 12 is 1/2. Okay? Now, cost. we have 1/2. So when we're talking about money, half of a dollar is 50 cents. So our answer to our problem is 1 candy or 1 chocolate cost 50 cents. Okay? So 1 candy costs 50 cents, so they're 50 cents each. What we did, we went through and used cubes, circling the numbers, underlining the question. From there, we identified what 2 things we're talking about in our question, and then we went and found what numbers are associated with each of our units, plugged those in, and solved. I used the butterfly method, but you could have used scale factor. Next question. The next question says, there are 3 books per student. There are 570 students. How many books are there? Okay, first, cubes. Cubes says to circle all numbers. 3 books per student. So like the first week that we started these, we talked about per student, meaning 1 student. There are 570 students. So I've circled all of my numbers. That's the C part of cubes. The U part of cubes is to underline your question. How many books are there? Now we need to start asking ourselves, what is it that we are comparing? In our question, there are 2 things. We're talking about books and students. Now, I wrote books over students. You could have wrote students over books. There is no right or wrong here on this particular set. All right, let's look for our given ratio. Our given ratio is going to compare both the books and the students. Most of the time they're in the same sentence. Not always, but most of the time. There are 3 books per student. So that's telling you that there are 3 books and 1 student. So it's giving you your unit rate or your constant of proportionality. There's always going to be a third number. This third number is going to go in one of these 2 places. 570 students. Where would that go? In the denominator or in the numerator? Hopefully you said that it's going to go in the denominator. The reason for that is because that's where I've placed students. Now, we have an empty space. We're going to put x as our value here. You will always have an empty spot, and you should put a variable in its place. Now, once you made it to this point, you're really going to solve it either using scale factor or you can use cross products. For this one, you could say 1 times x is simply x, and 3 times 570 is going to be 1,710. Now you need the last part. You need your explanation. Your explanation is there are 1,710 books. and that's your answer. Okay? Remember, use cubes. Go through, circle your numbers, underline your question. Ask yourself what two things we are talking about in our question. We're talking about books and students. Okay? From here, we fill in the numbers. Next question. The ratio of boys to girls is 4 to 5. There are 135 people on a team. How many girls are there? So this question is a little bit more difficult than I think you first may realize. It says that a ratio of boys to girls is 4 to 5. So 4 to 5 is your ratio. And this is boys, and this is girls. There are 135 people on a team. So this 135 isn't talking about boys or girls. It's talking about boys and girls. So this is what we're going to call a total number on a team. How many girls are there? Okay. Now, what we have to understand is the question is talking about boys and girls here at first. But our third number is talking about teams. And teams have both boys and girls on them. So our problem isn't boys and girls. It is girls to total number on a team. Okay? Now let's talk about the given ratio. The given ratio here is 4 boys to 5 girls. The 5 is simple. We know the 5 is associated with girls. But it's not 4 is the total. The total here is 9. Alright? And the way that I get that is I simply add 4 and 5. Now from here, I look at for my other number, and that's 135. That's 135 people on a team. So 135 would be the total. It's not the number of girls. And then here's my missing part. I'm going to call it Y. Okay? So now we've got it set up. And this is difficult for some students. Some of you may see it much quicker than others, and that's great. For those of you that are struggling, however, we needed to come back to our question, and we needed to pay attention to what is given in order to set up this ratio. So from here, I want to do cross products. So I'm going to do 9 times y, and that's going to be 9y equals 5 times 135, and that's 675. Now from here, what I want to do is realize the 9 is trying to multiply y. The inverse or opposite operation is to divide by 9 on both sides of the equal sign. 9 divided by 9 is 1. So the way we write 1y is simply y equals 675 divided by 9 is 75. Okay? Now, what does this mean? We did all this math, we got 75, but what in the world does it mean? To answer that question, go to where your variable is, look at the unit that you're talking about, and that's your answer. There are 75 girls. Now, by solving this, you should also be able to tell me how many boys there are. Because you know that there's 135 total, you know that 75 of them are girls, you should be able to tell me that 60 of them are boys. Okay? So being able to find one answer should really open up the whole problem to being able to ask multiple questions. All right? So for this problem, it says, see a glare on there. On a field trip, every chaperone is assigned to 12 students. Is the student to chaperone ratio proportional? If you use the table to determine, you would need several ratios to start. So let's look at this one. This type of question is asked a lot on your map test, and there is one question on your unit exam that is going to be similar to this one. So you have the two things you're talking about is chaperones and students. You have the given ratio of 1/12, and then you have all of this. But students get overwhelmed when they see this. They're unable to ignore this part, all right? And then understand that this could just be a variable. Let's just say that this is x, and then use cross products, or use scale factor for that matter. So what I want to do is show you how to do this. I'm going to set this up. 1/12 is equal to 2/x. Now guys, I've ignored this part of my table. You can use scale factor if you want. What do you multiply 1 by to get to 2? Well, you multiply it by 2. What would be 12 times 2? Well, 12 times 2 should be 24. X is equal to 24. All right, you have that one. Now let's go to this one. Keep this. 1/12. That's your given ratio. Now you ignore this one and these two, and your focus is 3/y. Okay, so I have 3/y. If you want to use scale factor, you could say, what times 1 gives you 3? Well, times 3 does. So 12 times 3 gives me 36. Four. Number 4, I'm going to do 1/12 is equal to 4/, it doesn't matter, you can say x if you want. Pause the video and answer the question. Okay, hopefully you said 48. Whether you use cross products or whether you used scale factor, it doesn't matter. You should have still gotten 48. 5. Set up the problem and answer the question. Okay, for this one, you should have said 1/12 is equal to 5/x, and you could have said 1 times 5, so 12 times 5, and that should give you 60. Alright, so we're going to set this one up. Cereal costs $3.99 for a 16-ounce box. What is the price per ounce? Round your answer to the nearest penny. Okay, cubes. Let's circle. $3.99, 16 ounces. Underline your question. What is the price per ounce? So from here, you need to identify what two things we're talking about. We're talking about money, and we're talking about weight or ounces. Now look for your given ratio. Look inside the problem. What was given? 3.99 and 16. The 3.99 is going to have to go on top because that's where I put the money. 16 goes on the bottom because that is where I put the weight. Now there will always be a third number, and in this case it is what is the price per ounce. Per ounce meaning 1 ounce. The 1 goes here, therefore I'm going to change this and make it an R. Your variable has to go here. Okay? From here, you can use scale factor. You can also use cross products. I'm going to use cross products. So I have 16 times R is 16R. I have 3.99 times 1, which is 3.99. Now from here, what you have to understand is that the 16 is trying to multiply by R. So I'm going to divide both sides by 16. 16 divided by 16 is 1. So the way that we write that is R. And 3.99 divided by 16 is 0.249. Alright, now we're talking about money, and the question said round to the nearest penny. So this should be 25 cents. Your explanation? The cereal costs 25 cents per ounce. And that's your answer. This one? There are 4 girls for every 10 boys at a party. There are 56 girls at the party. How many boys are there? Alright, let's go through. 4 girls, 10 boys, 56 girls. Let's underline our question. How many boys are there? Now looking at this question, we have girls and boys, and our third numbers are girls as well. So it's not combined here. They're still separate. So the two things that we're talking about are girls and boys. In our given ratio, it compares 4 girls to 10 boys. Our third number is 56 girls. Here's our empty spot. So I have X. Pause the video and answer the question. Alright, so when you answered this question, you could have done it a couple of different ways. You could have said, what number times 4 gives me 56? And that number is going to be 14. And so you would do 10 times 14, which gives you 140. And then you would, your explanation would be there were 140 boys at the party. Okay. The farmer has cows and chickens. He owns 5 chickens for every cow. He has a total of 96 animals. How many cows does he own? So let's go through and circle our numbers. We have 5 chickens for every cow. He has a total of 96 animals. How many cows does he own? Okay, so our given ratio, we're talking about chickens and a cow. However, our third number is talking about total number of animals. So that means that I'm going to have to add something. So the next one is how many cows does he own? So for this one, the two things that I need to talk about are cows over animals or total. Now let's go to our given ratio. Our given ratio is 5 chickens for every cow. Well, every cow meaning 1 cow. But how many total animals is that? Hopefully you said 6. From here, we're going to have to set this equal to the total number of animals he owns, which is 96, over x. Pause the video and answer the question. Okay, so from here, you could have done scale factor if you wanted. So we did what number times 6 gives me 96? Well, 16 does. So I would come up here and do 1 times 16, and that gives me 16. What does that mean? X is for cows. So the farmer has 16 cows, or the farmer owns 16 head of cattle. The auditorium can hold 1 person for every 5 square feet. It is 1,210 square feet. How many people can the auditorium hold? You'll need to set this one up and answer the question. Alright, so we have 1 person, 5 square feet, 1,210 square feet. Our question is how many people can the auditorium hold? So we're talking about people. We're talking about square feet. In our given ratio, it said 1 person to 5 square feet. Our other number is 1,210 square feet. It's going to go here in the denominator. Put an X for your missing value. For this one, I'm sure that there is, actually I know that there is, but I'm not 100% about what I need to multiply 5 by to get to 1,210. So I'm going to use the butterfly method. 5 times x is 5x. 1 times 1,210. Bring down your equal sign. Divide both sides by 5. The 5's cancel. X is equal to 242. Now what does that mean? The auditorium can hold 242 people. The recipe for 1 serving calls for 4 ounces of beef and 2 ounces of breadcrumbs. 50 people will be attending the dinner. How many ounces of breadcrumbs should be prepared. Pause the video, set this problem up, and solve it. Now, you have too much information here. You're not going to use everything that's given. So we've got 1 serving, 4 ounces of beef, 2 ounces of breadcrumbs, 50 people are coming. If 50 people are coming, you need 50 servings. Our question is, how many ounces of breadcrumbs should be prepared? Alright, so I'm talking about breadcrumbs, and I'm talking about serving. Now, look at your problem. Your problem clearly says that you have 4 ounces of beef, but the beef doesn't come into play here in the question. It is extra information. We're not going to use this. We don't need it to answer our question. We know that we need 2 ounces of breadcrumbs, makes 1 serving. We know that 50 people are coming, so I need 50 servings. What's the value of C? Okay. Scale factor, this is very simple. 1 times what gives you 50? 1 times 50. So 2 times 50 is 100. What does that mean? You need 100 ounces of breadcrumbs should be purchased. Okay. Mary received 4 votes for every vote that Jane received. 1,250 people voted. How many votes did Jane receive? Pause the video, answer the question. This one, think about it before you answer. Alright, so we have Mary received 4 votes for every vote that Jane received. So we have here 1 vote that Jane is receiving. And then our third number is 1,250 people voted. Okay, and that is your signal to know that you need to do something with the first 2 numbers. When that third number is talking about a combination of the first 2, okay, because this is how many people voted, and it's neither for Mary or Jane, it's for Mary and Jane. So we have to figure that part out. How many votes did Jane receive? Okay, so I have Jane, and I want to know people. So total number of people. Now if I look at my given ratio, Jane got 1 vote, Mary got 4. So for Jane, it's 1 vote. The total 4 plus 1 is 5. My question was 1,250 people. So that's going to be this. Now I put X here. Alright. Now you should be able to solve it once you had it set it up. So I got 5 times X, and 5 times X is 5X. Bring down my equal sign. 1 times 1,250 is 1,250. The 5 is trying to multiply, so I'm going to divide both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So we have x equals 250. What does that mean? X is 250. So Jane received 250 votes. Another great question would be, how many did Mary receive? To calculate Mary's, you would simply take the total, subtract what Jane got, and hopefully you're able to tell me that Mary received 1,000 votes. Okay, so now we're going to stay with the same learning target, but we are going to deal with fractions. And a lot of you had already noticed that within IXL last week, if you got a SMART score above a 90, you started seeing fractions and you were unsure what to do. And that's okay, because this is going to be new for 7th grade. And this is the idea of something called complex fractions. And they look nasty, but they're really simple. So we're going to use the same process that we talked about in the beginning of this video, and we're going to apply it to these problems with fractions. So it says that a container with 2 5/6 gallons of weed killer can spray 3 5/6 lawns. How many gallons would it take to spray 3 lawns? Alright, now cubes, you should know to circle your numbers. Okay, let's underline our question. How many gallons would it take to spray 3 lawns? Now from here, what you need to do is identify what 2 things are you talking about. So you're talking about gallons, and you're talking about lawns. Now you want to go to your given ratio. Alright, your given ratio is where it compares gallons and lawns. So you have 2 5/6, and you have 3 5/6. This is called a complex fraction because you have a fraction over a fraction. We'll talk about it here in just a second. Now your third number is 3 lawns, and your missing number. Now from here, this should be very simple. This should be a problem that any of you could solve. It looks bad, it looks nasty, but you know the skills required. So I'm going to do 3 5/6 times x, which is going to be 3 5/6 x. I'm going to do 2 5/6 times 3. Now I'm going to show you on your calculator 2 5/6. The way I put that in is 2 ABC, 5 ABC, 6 times 3, and I get 8 1/2. Okay, so equals 8 1/2. Alright. The 3 5/6 is trying to multiply, so I'm going to divide 3 5/6 on this side. I have to come over here and do the same thing. 3 5/6 divided by 3 5/6 is 1. So the way that I write 1x is just simply x. Now from here, I got to take my 8 1/2 divided by 3 ABC, 5 ABC, 6, hit enter, and I get 2 and 5 23rds. So 2 and 5 23rds. What does that mean? That means to spray 3 lawns, you would need 2 and 5 23rds gallons of weed killer. Okay? To spray 3 lawns, you would need 2 and 5 23rd gallons of weed killer. Let's talk about number 2. Number 2 says it takes 3 2/6 spoons of chocolate syrup to make 2 3/5 gallons of chocolate milk. How many spoons of syrup would it take to make 4 gallons of chocolate milk? So we're going to go through, circle. So we got 3 2/6 spoons of chocolate syrup, 2 3/5 gallons of chocolate milk. We're going to underline our question. Well, we got 4 gallons here of chocolate milk. How many spoons of syrup would it take to make 4 gallons of chocolate milk? So we're still on our third number talking about gallons. That's one of our things. So we don't have to do anything as far as adding. We can just use the problem with the numbers that are given. So we're talking about spoons of chocolate syrup, and we're talking about gallons of chocolate milk. Alright, now let's look at our given ratio. Try to move that so there we go. Our given ratio here see, that's very blurry. Give me just a second. Alright, so our given ratio, spoons of chocolate syrup is 3 2/6. Our chocolate milk is 2 3/5. 4 gallons of chocolate milk, so it's needing to go into the denominator. And I'm going to put C as my variable. Alright, so from here we have 2 3/5 times C, which is 2 3/5 C, is equal to 3 2/6 times 4. So I have 3 ABC2 ABC6. So that's 3 2/6 times 4, and that gives me 13 1/3. From here, I need to divide both sides by 2 3/5. Two 3/5 divided by itself is equal to 1. The way we write 1C is simply C is equal to 13 1/3 divided by 2 ABC3 ABC5. Hit enter, and we get 5 5/39. Well, what does that mean? Remember, when you need to write in a sentence, find your variable and go over. So we're talking about 5 5/3 spoons of syrup will make 4 gallons of chocolate milk. Number 3, it takes 2¼ kilometers of thread to make 3½ boxes of shirts. How many kilometers of thread will it take to make 8 boxes? Pause the video and answer the question. Alright, so from here you should have said 2¼ kilometers of thread, 3½ boxes of shirts, 8 boxes of shirts. How many kilometers of thread will it take? Okay, so we're talking about kilometers, and we're talking about boxes, okay, of shirts. Our given ratio was 2¼ Our boxes that made was 3½. Our third number was 8 boxes over X. Okay, so you should have set this up. And our answer for this one, let me do some. Should have been 5 1/7. 5 1/7 kilometers of thread would have done 8 boxes of shirts. Number 4. Number 4 says, a tire shop had to fill 2½ tires with air. It took a small air compressor 2½ seconds to fill them up. How long would it take to fill 8 tires? Pause the video, set it up, answer the question. Alright, so we have 2½ tires, 2½ seconds. How long would it take to fill 8 tires? Some of you already know the answer from here without having to set up anything, but let's set it up nevertheless. We're talking about tires, and we're talking about seconds. Our given ratio is 2½ tires in 2½ seconds. We have 8 tires, put a T there. So our question was, how long would it take to fill 8 tires? So that is what my variable is. So whether you did scale factor or cross products, it doesn't matter. You should have gotten 8 for T. So T is equal to 8. And that means it would take 8 seconds to fill 8 tires. Alright, guys, I know this was a long video. This finishes up this unit. We will have our unit exam at the end of this week, and you will have next week to work on it as well. It is imperative that if you're struggling, that you are attending the Google Meets. If you are not someone who feels comfortable asking questions, remember to stay to the end at that Google Meet and we can answer your questions there. If that doesn't work, call us, email us, reach out to us, and we will set up a time to tutor you one-on-one. Also, if you are behind on your work, try and get that caught up over the next week and a half, because this is going to be the end of the 9 weeks. If I can help you in any way, please reach out to me. And guys, have a good week and good luck on your final exam for math.